I went to Vegas with one of my high school friends who is wildly successful guy, and he was drinking non-alcoholic beer at the blackjack table, but he
Mm-hmm.
drinks, and I was like, "What are you doing drinking non-alcoholic beer?" He goes, "I just don't want to get drunk." And I was like, "Huh, I'll try one of those." I love non-alcoholic beer now. Like, that's fucking awesome. But you're just like not getting drunk in Vegas on purpose. Like, who
You
does
choose
this?
that?
This is one of my high school friends, and I was like, surely, because I don't know if you did this, but I went through a phase of like, I'm normal, even though I don't drink, I'm still gonna go out to the bars and to the clubs and to
Yeah.
these dinners. I'm going to stay till the bitter end with everyone else and just show that I'm still me.
This episode of the Sober Curator Show includes discussions about the use of psychedelics. While we honor diverse approaches to sobriety, we acknowledge this topic may be sensitive or triggering for some viewers. If you are in recovery or navigating sobriety, please approach this content with care and consult with trusted professionals regarding your own journey. Welcome, Ward Richmond. You are a Dallas-based artist, podcaster, commercial real estate entrepreneur, and after years of navigating a chaotic lifestyle, you found peace and balance through the journey that chronicled your latest album, which is called Spaciousness. And you have an amazing story. Of course, we're going to get into all that. We're also going to explore your experiences with parenting, helping friends with addiction, and living a life of purpose through music, meditation, and more. Welcome to the show, Ward.
Thank you, Tamara. It's great to be here.
So let's start off your album Spaciousness. It's an exploration of finding peace in the aftermath of living, let's say, very unconsciously. Can you tell us about that shift and how it transformed your life? Because previously, and I love this, you described your music career as hard drinking honky tonk, where it was more about choosing chaos rather than peace.
Yeah, that's right. I think, drinking for me just came naturally as I got into college. I was an athlete and I went to college to play football, and then got injured my freshman year, quit the football team, joined a fraternity. I'd already started playing music in high school, but then really poured myself into music once my football career ended. And that kind of with fraternity life just led to drinking. And this is also, I assume things are a little different today from what I see, but this was in the late 90s. I graduated from college in 2000, and drinking culture was such a thing that it just seemed so normal to me. Like, oh, I'm in college. This is what you do. And it was just normal. And it was actually like, if you didn't do it, you were missing out, is what I thought. It was a great social lubricant for me. I grew up in Dallas, and I went to an inner city public high school. I went to the same elementary, middle, high school, all in the same neighborhood growing up. And then I went to college at Brown University, which is like polar opposite, moving from like Dallas public schools to an Ivy League school on the East Coast. So I didn't know anyone. I went there to play football. My football career ended very early. So that was my identity. So then I didn't have identity, or I had to reform my identity because that's what it had always been. There was all kinds of things that I built up through my youth. But when I got to Brown and it's funny, like college had these like really more cliquey type buckets of groups that you fell into more so than it did at my high school, which was kind of a smaller high school. So when I got to college, I just felt like I needed to fit in, and I found the drinking community. And that was comprised of a lot of athletes too. And the athletes all partied, and the fraternity people partied. And I found a great group of friends in that circle. And I prided myself on my ability to drink. So it all began there. My band, we played, like you mentioned, like honky tonk music, rockabilly music, old school country music. Like if you go listen to it, like Roger Miller, Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, all these guys, like it's about going to the bar and partying and broken hearts and all that comes with that. And it was all just like fantasy land to me. And I was living it and I began living it. And it was fun for a long time. So, yeah, I mean, our second album, my old band from back in my college days and beyond, we were called Slick 57, and we had an album called Drunk Life. And that was after a song I wrote called Drunk Life. And I had a song called The Bird about drinking wild turkey and getting fucked up. And I mean, like every song was about it. And we worshiped at bar rooms and alcohol and that lifestyle. And I really felt like if you're not doing this, you're not living life properly. And I mean, it was my identity for so long. It continued on until my daughter was born, and I can really trace it back to that. And she was 1.5 when I checked myself into a treatment center at that time. I've been sober for 8 of the last 9 years, but I fell off the wagon last year for about a year. So I'm currently, as we record this, I just hit like 11 months of sobriety on 2 days ago. So that's where I'm at today, but
Yeah.
I mean, that I track it back to when my daughter was born. That's when I realized like, oh, this is not cool. This is not how I want to be. I don't want to be a dad that gets drunk and parties. When I started thinking about how I was going to be perceived by my daughter and what kind of father I was going to be, which it took me 1.5 years of her being in the world to really let that sink in, and going to marriage counseling because my marriage was falling apart. And the marriage counselor pointed out to me that she called me a high functioning alcoholic. And that's the first time I'd ever gone to therapy, to go to marriage counseling, which my ex-wife at the time basically forced me into doing. I didn't want to go. But when she told me that, it was really eye opening. And it was one of the first times anyone had called me out and said, you have a drinking problem. My ex-wife didn't ever even tell me I had a drinking problem. She didn't even really buy into it. She's like, you're just an asshole. He doesn't have a drinking problem. I mean, all of our friends drank like that. Like it was just totally normal. And I got up, I went to work, I made good money. I took care of us and all that kind of stuff. And I played in this band. Like we hung out in this, when you drink like that, you hang out with a bunch of people who drink like that. And I was pretty high functioning, in the scheme of how much I drank for sure. And a lot of my friends, then you find that friend group. I'm putting high functioning in quotes because high functioning is what I am today, being sober. But for as much as I drank, which was a lot, it was just this constant fog that I lived in. I would always find excuses to go really hard. And then I am a commercial real estate broker. We entertain clients a lot. We go to dinners all the time. We go to conferences. Like it's just everything was an occasion to drink. Being out of town, away from my family, occasion to just drink extremely excessively. Oftentimes, at least in my case, I didn't realize that it was chaotic. I thought it was just life.
Yeah.
And alcohol, I viewed as something that helped me socialize. It helped me with my anxiety. It helped me be better at my job because it helped me to be more fun and all of these things. And I felt like it made everything more enjoyable. And that is just like pure insanity when you're living the way I was and believed that. So I finally started changing my ways back. And that was late 2015 when I went to rehab. And then that just kind of began a journey of when you quit drinking, you have to move your energy from that to something else, right? I think that's like 101, what they teach you in rehab, AA, everything. Like you gotta go find other things to do. And I think at first, what came naturally to me was pouring myself into my work
Mm-hmm.
in real estate, and started going to Tony Robbins conferences and Grant Cardone conferences and reading these self-help books, which led me to discover yoga and meditation through that. Because you get into all of that, they start talking about kind of the spiritual aspect of success, and
Mm-hmm.
most of these groups do. And so then I kind of got into yoga and spirituality. Then I got into psychedelics and became really curious about that. And I tried it, and so I started doing psychedelics, and I wound up doing ketamine, and that was after like 6.5 years. I say 6.5 years of sobriety. That's from not drinking
Mm-hmm.
then.
Yeah.
Today, I'm 11 months sober from absolutely everything. But
Yeah.
during that first 6.5 years, I was on pharmaceutical drugs like anti-anxiety medications, gabapentin, and I was on naltrexone, which is something to help you quit drinking. And I did all kinds of like doctor prescribed drugs, and then I did ayahuasca. I smoked weed. I did MDMA. The psychedelics became kind of an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was some positives that came from that, like mushrooms, and the ayahuasca was a really great experience for me. But then I went to a fasting retreat. So I'm really on this like healthy path, like trying my best to heal and looking back, it's using these drugs to heal. And did that work? Sometimes, but also other times the addict in me, I was using them as something to go to party with and go to music
Mm-hmm.
festivals and go, like, I don't drink, but I do ecstasy and I'm healing. And then I discovered ketamine at a fasting retreat. I got a prescription to it because a lot of the people going to it had talked that they were doing that, and they recommended it because there was a sound bath on the last day. And I did the ketamine, and ketamine is and I didn't realize this is all happening at the time, but 2 months later, I drank again for the first time in 6.5 years. And
Mm-hmm.
ketamine's like very similar it has a lot of similarities to alcohol that I can see now looking back. But when it was
Mm-hmm.
happening, I didn't realize it. And then I didn't even put two and two together when I decided to start drinking again. I was just like, I'm healed. I think I can drink again. And I drank again for a year. I logged every drink during that year. I was journaling. I was trying to be so conscious about it. I did not fall off the wagon and like get shit faced the first day. I had like a few drinks by the beach, like, oh my God, I'm doing it. I'm so healed. But then I tracked it, and the last 6 months of that year, it was 9 drinks a day average. And I
Mm-hmm.
drank every day except for a stretch of like 4 days when I had strep throat. So I was not healed. And anyway, so that's kind of how that all occurred. And then I quit drinking again. I kept doing the ketamine, and eventually just had an experience, a psychedelic experience, that I would just say it was like, it catalyzed like what I call my 12 nonstop dark days of the soul,
Mm-hmm.
during which time I felt like I was on the verge of going crazy. And I got strong messaging from God that my time with the psychedelics and the plant medicines and the alcohol are over, and I no longer need any of that. So I quit everything. This is so crazy when I say it all, but yeah. And then like 4 months later, on a plane, I fly all the time for work, and in first class, and get handed my club soda with vodka in it. I did
Oh.
not order it. And I've gotten so spiritual at this stage of my life. I'm like, is this a test for me to try to drink in moderation again? I swear. And I drank for 2 weeks. And then I actually did get pretty fucked up the first night I drank again after that plane episode. But then the next 2 weeks, it was pretty mild. And then my daughter just asked me, because we were it was Thanksgiving break and I had a beer, and she just said, "Dad, I thought you didn't drink anymore." And she said that, and I just decided right then and there, like that was the true spiritual awakening number 100 for me. That I quit the next day. I started doing AA shortly after that. I'd been before many of times, but I'd never worked the steps before. And so this year is the first time I've ever like fully worked the steps with the sponsor and done everything. And the transition to move from that to here took a lot of time, and it didn't come with quitting drinking and being sober for a year and like being healed. And the
Mm-hmm.
healing process is something that's still going on. And now, approaching 10 years really of like intentionally working on this despite falling off the wagon, like
Mm-hmm.
I still continued working. But I also recognize now, like, this healing journey and the 12 steps make this so clear too. It's like, it's a day in, day out thing.
Yeah.
And you're never healed. The way I see it now, and what this album's about a lot, going back to the music and everything, but it's really just how I live today. And it's what keeps me sober is, am I going to choose peace or am I going to choose chaos?
Yeah.
And that can be lots of things besides mind altering substances as well.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's what we learn in AA too, is like, yeah, there's ways to avoid a lot of the situations that made us want to drink in the first place. And I recognize that now as I slowly but surely become more and more aware and more conscious of what serves me and what doesn't serve me. I know
Mm-hmm.
peace serves me, but which decisions are going to lead there? And thankfully, I feel like I'm getting a pretty damn good grasp on it, like at this stage, knowing that can all change rapidly. But I'm focused on, am I going to choose peace or am I going to choose chaos? And that can be having a drink, or for me, I was just telling someone, like, with sugar, I'm like bad with sugar. Sugar impacts me in a way today. Again, probably age. Maybe it's just super hyper awareness about my physical self that I have now because I'm sober and because I've done all this work. But like I was just telling someone, I treat sweets like I do alcohol now.
Yeah.
And because my addiction will kick in with those. And if I go eat like a piece of cake tonight, I'm going to want one really bad tomorrow night. But if I
Mm-hmm.
don't have it, I don't really want it. Like I do, but it's like, it's the same with alcohol. When I'm sober and I'm not drinking, it's thankfully way easier for me to abstain from drinking versus if I go have 3 glasses of wine tonight, which I'm pretty confident I could go do tonight. If I put my mind to it and consciously said, I'm going to go have 3 glasses of wine tonight, I like 99% chance I can pull that off. The problem is tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then the next day and the next day and the next day. And like, I journaled and I tracked every drink the last time I tried this ridiculous experiment, and I saw exactly what happened, and that's what it did. And that's like doing it and trying to do it in a very conscious, controlled manner. But it's like, that's chaos. Even if I have the 3 drinks,
Yeah.
like that's chaos.
Yeah.
Peace is, I'll have club soda with a splash of cranberry and a lime, please. Like, boom.
Which is also amazing.
It's fucking peaceful.
I know. And
I don't worry about it.
I find it so fascinating, and everybody goes through different things, but we are so good at even turning healthy behaviors or healthy activities, I should say, into unhealthy behaviors. I want to get a bit more into the music, and because I found, your story about the recording process with Jason, and you're still writing music and creating music because you went from that chaos to peace. I'd love for you to talk about kind of the recording process with Jason and how taking more of a spacious approach to taking more time in the studio helped with your personal growth as well as your friendship? Because I mean, I think this whole, getting sober thing, we need each other. Like, we're not meant to do this in isolation. We're meant to be creative and grow with other people.
So the interesting thing is the first year I recorded this album is the year I fell off the wagon. So I was drinking and using drugs during the first year. And then the second year I was sober for. So that's really interesting as well. The spacious approach to it. It's funny, spaciousness is the last song I wrote for the album, which I wrote like in May of this year. So, I mean, it just is a freshly written song. And I didn't even think about it till I was like putting out this album, like, oh, this is funny, because it was actually an extremely spacious process. And the way we did that is really just, I went into the studio with Jason, who's a longtime friend of mine and a super talented musician and producer. And I said, hey, let's record a song together and see how that goes. And so we did a song. And then a couple months later, said, let's do a song. And I'm a single dad with a 6-year-old and a 10-year-old, and run a business and travel a lot. So my schedule is kind of crazy. I control it really well, I think, to keep balance in my life. But part of that balance is like, I need to space out my recording passion and hobby so I don't overwhelm myself. And I can't go take a week off and hammer out an album, do that all in a week. Like we used to do it that way. A week or 2 weeks, just go record everything. And that's a nonstop process. And it's fun. That's a fun way to record. And it's like summer camp or something, where you're just like living at the studio and you're creating this art that's just one piece of time that you remember forever. And I still think the way we did it is like that, but it was really like taking a couple afternoons off during a week and doing a song. And also Jason would take what we did, which was basically me and a guitar, and I would bring the song in, we would arrange it, he would build the beats, and then he would go add layers to it, and we'd bring in other musicians that would come in, and I might hop into the studio if somebody's up there playing on it, but a lot of times people would just mail it in or just do it. So I wasn't like super involved like 1,000% of the time, and Jason's handling a lot of the heavy lifting on that. So I kind of just go to the studio with my song, we lay it down, and then he makes the magic happen. And then I'll listen and be like, hey, let's have another session with the guitar player. We should add fiddle and we should add this, and we collaborate till the songs were done. But yeah, it was a really cool process. And Jason, one of the funniest things he said, when we were during that second year, I was like, yeah, because I don't drink anymore. And he goes, well, why don't you just say that because you're not drinking today? It's like, yeah, that good point. Because isn't that so true?
So true. I know. I remember when I quit, it was like, I'm never going to drink again. And that thought was so overwhelming that I just thought, I only have to worry about today.
Did you, are you a one-chip wonder, as they say?
I am. Yep.
That's super impressive.
But I always say yet, because I know that there's, it's like I have to keep something between myself and that drink. And like I said, we are really good, and I am still really good at turning healthy things into unhealthy things. So I have to, you talked about that spiritual part. I think that is been one of the biggest things in my recovery is, when I first came in, I'm like, nope, you're going to mention the word God, forget it, screw it. Right. And it means different things. I never grew up religious or anything. But when I actually had that spiritual awakening, everything shifted for me.
Oh, yeah. No doubt. And I always believed in God, and I was brought up in the church, and I prayed, and I've always had this relationship with God. And when I first went to AA, I still couldn't tell the truth. Like, I
Mm,
wasn't telling the truth about the shit that I had done to my therapist. Like, I'm
yeah.
not definitely not going to go tell it to some random dude in AA.
Yeah.
Like, I went to a couple meetings to do the steps with this guy, and like, no thanks. I'll just go. I made a point to go like once a week, and then once a month, and once a quarter, then once a year. But I never really took it seriously. And I always was like, yeah, I mean, I read the 12 steps. I'm like, oh yeah, I did them all with myself. I'm good. But then when you actually work them, I mean, God plays a huge role, and he plays a huge role, he or she, Mother,
Mhm.
Father, God, in
Mhm.
my day-to-day sobriety. And on those tough days where my mouth starts watering and the ultimate sales guy in my brain that happens to be there starts trying to convince me it's okay to have 3 glasses of wine tonight,
Mhm.
and my mouth starts watering. I just hope that I will continue to remember to get down on my knees and pray and ask for help. And just, gosh, the power that brings to helping to keep me sober is huge.
Mhm.
My 10-year-old daughter was just complaining about, feeling sad the other day, and having a tough day. And she's like, I just don't know why I feel this way. I was like, well, one thing you can do is you can just pray and ask for help. Like, I know my advice only goes so far. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's better to just pray than to go try to think of a solution, and just
Mhm.
believe that help will come along. And I, I lean on God heavily this round of my sobriety, and so thankful for that spiritual awakening that's occurred for me as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah. How has parenting influenced or your approach to life and creativity?
Yeah, it's it's funny. I just posted on Instagram today. I have a song called "Pay for the Bills," and I think it's my most downloaded song off the new album. And I wrote that song. We had like Snowmageddon or Snowpocalypse or whatever you call it. And when it happens in Dallas and it snows in Dallas, it's so random. And we had this like crazy winter storm, which happens
Mhm.
from time to time. So it was during the work week, and I work throughout North America. So weather is not like there in Dallas is not impacting my business at all. So business is still going. I've got calls to be on all day, but I had both kids over at my house, and it's a snow day, and they're wanting to go play. I'm like, daddy, daddy. And I wrote this song, Pay for the Bills. And the lyrics go, I work because I have to pay for the bills, man, pay for the bills. So that right there is so funny. And I wrote it as a joke, and I didn't even think I was ever going to record that song. And I
Mhm.
played it for Jason, and he's like, we have to record this song. And now it's like the most popular song on the album. So that's one cool kid creativity story. Another cool one is my daughter helped me write 2 of the songs, including the title track "Spaciousness" and then the song "The Good Things," where I'd play them for her and she'd say, "I don't like your music, Dad, but if I were you, I would change this line to this line and change this line to that line." And I mean, it's just like mind blown how her little mind works. And she
Mhm.
loves music. She turned me on to all of this new pop music that's going on today. I think she has great taste in music, modern music. She's not so big on the old school, but she did start liking Oasis now, which I
Wow.
found interesting. So she asked to play Wonderwall, and it's like, okay, that's right up my alley. That's when I was in high school.
Yeah.
Oasis was killing it, and they're back. So but anyway, so that's fun. And the kids, and I'm really open about my drinking with them too,
Mhm.
especially Betty. Levi's 6, and he's just a little too little to care about
Mhm.
it. But Betty's very curious, and she's asked me about it, and we talk about it. And I grew up, my mom is an alcoholic. She's in recovery. She was an alcoholic, however you want to say it. But she quit when I was little at like 6. And I
Mhm.
don't ever remember her drinking. And she never told me she had a problem with it. You
Mhm.
know, such was like the times,
Yeah.
and I think it was kind of the thing to do back then is bury it and just don't drink and don't talk about it. And
Mhm.
I remember her just telling, I would ask her when I got in high school, like, why don't you drink? She's like, I just don't like it. And then she fell off the wagon when I was 35 years old. And my dad's like, Mom's been drinking again. It's like, again? What, Mom's drinking? I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, what world are we living in?
Yeah.
And then, like, oh, this makes perfect sense. And that actually happened 1 year before I went to that treatment center. And that had to, I mean, looking back, that was a part of it. Like, oh, wait, this makes sense. Like,
Mhm.
this like really runs in our family. Like, my mom struggles with this hard, but she just never let me know. And she never drank through the whole rest of my childhood. So I just thought of her as this perfect woman who was PTA president, never drank alcohol and all over my shit all the time.
Mhm.
And that's who she was. And she was an incredible mom, but I don't remember ages like up to 6. I don't ever remember what it was like when she drank. But
Right.
then anyway, I appreciated knowing. Like, I think the truth sets you free is a cliche for a reason.
Mhm.
And I'm very open about it with my kids and will continue to be.
Mhm.
And I think that's the best way to
Yeah.
be, and just say, hey, this runs in the family. And I just like to say, like, we like to drink. Like, we like the way alcohol makes us feel more than normal people.
Yeah.
So it's something that you need to be aware of
Yeah.
before you go get into it, and be careful.
Absolutely. And I think that the being open about it, I remember the first 5 years of my sobriety, I didn't wanna talk about it because of that stigma that's out there.
Yeah.
And by talking about it, we can slowly start to get rid of that stigma because it is important to know, right? I mean the kids, we talk to them all the time and just say your birth parents were addicts and alcoholics. Like, you've got the genetics. You have to be careful. You have to know about this. And I can't save them, but I can talk to them about my experience. They've never seen me have a drink because it's been 12 years now. But the only way we're going to lower that stigma is if we start talking openly about it and we are more aware of the fact that there's this potential that I could trigger that genetics, because I had the genetics and I never felt like I fit in. I always felt awkward and out of place until I had that first drink. And then it was like I was off to the races.
Oh,
Right.
yeah. Oh, yeah. What I've learned on this journey is that truth transmutes shame.
Mm,
And when you bring it out into the open, there's nothing you have to worry about anymore.
hmm.
Everyone knows whatever anyone will think, they will think. I've actually written blogs about it. I've done multiple podcasts on this topic. I talk about everything now, that things that like I mentioned, I wouldn't talk to a therapist about back like
Hmm.
5 years ago even. Today, I just speak openly about, because the truth transmutes the shame, and that realization, that helps me also stay sober, because I have a lot of accountability partners from my past selves that have written these blogs and that have told this story about my drinking, so that if I do think, hey, I want to go drink again tonight, it's there goes the chaos again. It's just a pain in the ass to have to explain it to anybody that I'm with. And like, I'm just trying it again. I think I'm healed now. Like, what? Like, I don't even want to have that conversation. It's just sounds insane, but it's the truth. It's setting you free. And it really does. It really helps. And it is a great weapon for my sobriety, is like destigmatizing the shit out of it, and just
Yeah.
like, who cares? Yeah, I drank a lot, but I quit. I used to think going to AA and being sober meant you were a loser. And now I know. Like, it's the fucking
Yeah.
opposite. Like,
Yeah.
you're a warrior.
Yeah.
And if you're like scared to go to an AA meeting, like, and you don't want to quit drinking or you don't see how you can do it, like that is the pathway to loserdom. I've been on it many a times.
Mhm.
And but like going into the rooms, having these conversations, like this is the real, like this is living. And having a conversation like this really fulfills me in a way
Yeah.
much greater than any drunken barroom conversation at 12:30 a.m.
Mhm.
Ever did.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, it is definitely more real, and I realize it doesn't matter what our stories are or how we got here. All of us, I mean, when somebody actually, because I had the same thing, I was like, "I'm not like you people." I was a classy drunk, right? So not classy. But it was like, actually, if I took the time to sit and listen and pick out the similarities, there was a lot of them. And it
Mhm.
was very eye-opening to, how, I didn't go to treatment and I wasn't in jail only because I didn't get caught. That's the only difference between
Right.
me and someone who did. But anytime someone shares their story, I can relate to so much of it, right? And especially the feeling, right? It's like, I want to forget. I don't want to feel that stuff. Like, forget it. What would you say your favorite thing about being sober? You've had 8 years and, it doesn't matter if it's consecutively, you've had that time, you have that time. What has been your favorite thing about living a sober life?
Oh gosh, that's a difficult question. There's so many is why it's a difficult question. So many
Mhm.
things. I mean, my ability to be present, truly live in the present moment and to know know thyself,
Mhm.
to really have a heightened state of awareness and love for myself, that like to feel my feelings, to be more disciplined in the things that I do, to have a stronger connection to God, to be a better dad, to make better decisions all across the board in all that I do, be it
Mhm.
family, life, business, romance, all of those things. Like, there's nothing better than waking up sober. There's no
Mhm.
hangover. There's no slurry conversation I had. There's no DM that I shot into some gal's inbox on Instagram trying like saying something. Um, slurring in my text messages to somebody that I shouldn't, that I wake up in the morning like, why the fuck did you send that? And yeah, being present with my children is
Mhm.
so huge. And
Yeah.
not being on the couch with my bottle of wine and just drinking and like, oh yeah, go over there, do that. I mean, just the level of presence that goes away almost immediately when I begin to drink.
Yeah.
That so the presence, I think, is the number one thing. Is just being present.
I love that. And yeah, I experienced that too. I know we're running low on time, but you also have a podcast,
I do.
right? So what inspired you to start the podcast?
I had a podcast for commercial real estate only that I
Mhm.
really guested on someone else's podcast for a couple years, and I really enjoyed podcasting.
Mhm.
But I wanted to do something that was a little more broad than just my business. And so I set up my podcast. It's called Truckin' On.
Mhm.
And we've just hit 100 episodes. So it's been an amazing journey, interview people that inspire me and learn about their lives and life lessons, and always walk away with new tidbits of knowledge. And then I also have a platform where I can go speak about things like this, like about sobriety. One of the last times I really wanted to drink and I had to get down on my knees and pray and ask God to help me like through that. I was at a meditation conference, by the way. I mean, it'll just come out of nowhere, the cravings. And yeah, Joe Dispenza is this wonderful meditation instructor. And I was at
Yeah.
one of his conferences, and he drinks wine and he talks about it a lot. And he was It's like, yeah, I was drinking wine with this scientist, and after he had a few glasses of wine, he admitted that he believes in my work and that meditation is real, like the benefits of it are real, even though he's a scientist. And he's like, when he was sober, he like would say that he doesn't believe in any of this malarkey, but after a few glasses of wine, of course, all I hear is a few glasses of wine. Sounds really good. I almost drank, and we were at a hotel, and there's a steakhouse, and I went up to my hotel room and I prayed. And what came to me is go record a podcast on the 10 reasons you did not drink yesterday. And then I can just go plug in my podcast gear and make a list and go do that. And then I'm like, okay, those are the 10 reasons why I'm not going to go have that glass of wine at the steakhouse. And thank you, God, and moving on. But I love the podcast for that, just to like be able to go talk about that or talk about things I want to talk about and talk to people who I'm interested in talking to, and always a learning experience. And I love doing it.
I have one more question I want to ask you, because we are huge on pop culture. Like, that is when Elise started this thing, it was like pop culture. So who would you say is your favorite sober celeb and why?
Oh, gosh. Again, so many. I love Googling sober celebrities from time to time.
Me too.
The first one who comes to mind is Brad Pitt. I don't know, because I'm his doppelganger.
I can see that. Totally.
Yeah, everyone mistakes me for being him, so I'm just glad he's sober too. Hell no. It's cool. Brad Pitt just seems like this. I like all of these. Gosh, like Willie Nelson, I don't believe he drinks. Probably not now, especially, but I read his book, and I think of him as being this hard drinking guy, but he doesn't drink. He obviously smokes weed. But I don't know, Brad Pitt, Bradley Cooper, another Brad, like he's sober. Like, these guys just seem like these guys that I want to be like, like that are just cool, and they're like, seem to be just great people. But hearing that they're sober is really cool. There's so many musicians who I like idolized growing up and thought of them, and they wrote songs about getting fucked up. So many of them are sober now.
Yeah.
So many of them were sober when I was deep into my addiction, and like living my life based upon a song someone wrote that had to go to recovery and get sober, who's happily sober and still writing like incredible music. So I guess, and I assume Brad Pitt, like, obviously, like, he partied, and then he quit, and he transcended it. He looks great. Like, he's just like crushing it. He's still doing big movies. He's doing all that. So that's cool. I love Theo Von.
Yeah.
Theo Von might be my favorite, actually. He's very sober. He talks about recovery on every episode. He's a comedian, and so he might actually have to be first, but I like Brad Pitt too, and Bradley Cooper.
Well, and you're his doppelganger. I mean,
I know, that's why I said it.
I was just about to text Elise and say, hey, Elise, I thought that we were interviewing Ward. I didn't realize Brad was coming on the show. I was a little confused there.
I could tell you were startled.
I know, I was. I had troubles getting
Sorry
going.
about that.
That's okay. That's okay.
It's just
you're
Ward.
Forgiven.
Okay.
Well, it was awesome having you on the show, Ward. Thank you for sharing your story, because, I mean, when we talk openly about this stuff, more people can get better.
Yeah. Truth transmutes the shame.
Absolutely.
There we go. Thanks, Tamar. Really appreciate you taking the time to visit with me today.